This video is brought to you by Squarespace. We're gonna get to some mail today, but real quick, if you're new to this channel, I've been making these videos for, well, it's gonna be 14 years this year, which kind of blows my mind, but I don't know, probably about 10 years ago, people started sending me stuff in the mail. So I do these mail videos because there's generally some pretty awesome stuff that comes in. So this is viewer work, and I'm excited to be here, so let's get to work. So first up is a print. This is very cool. This comes to us from Brighton, UK. This is from Tam Hector, who writes, "Dear Ted, I've been following your channel since I picked up a camera 4 years ago, and I wanted to send you this gift as a token of my appreciation for all the help that you've given me through the art of photography." Tom, this is really nice. On the back, it just says artist proof. This is Huts from 2021. What I love about this, it sits right on the edge of abstraction and reality. You can kind of tell what it is, but not really. I love this. Thank you, Tom. This is awesome work. So next up is this little zine called The Road Less Traveled, Colorado State Highway 14. This comes to us from Scott Hayes, who also has a note, and he writes, "Ted, I've been putting off sending this as, like most photographers and artists, we have a hard time believing our work is any good. This is a small portfolio of Colorado State Highway 14, which is a 2-lane highway that runs from the plains and farmland to the mountains of Colorado. I believe it's the third longest / continuous highway in the state. Interestingly enough, a lot of people know that it runs from Sterling to Fort Collins, and others know that it runs from Fort Collins to just below Steamboat Springs. Unfortunately, very few people know that it runs the entire 230 plus miles. I grew up driving it with my parents to visit family, go fishing, etc. It's always had a special meaning for me. About 90% of the images are in medium or large format. Hope you enjoy it, Scott." So Scott, first of all, the zine is fabulous. And one thing I want to address is you start this note by saying, "I've been putting off sending this as most photographers, artists, we have a hard time believing our work is any good." You guys got to believe in your work. I read a lot of you say that. Put it out there. Put your best foot forward and just make something. You've got to start somewhere. I would say that 9 times out of 10, you're doing a great job. And I know how it is. We tend to look at our work all the time, and so we don't see it as fresh and new sometimes in the same way that we see other things. But I'm just saying, you got to get beyond that. We'll talk about this again in a second. I've got another thing in here that I want to address. But thanks, Scott, for the zine. I love it. It's going in the collection. Next up is a zine that comes to us from Chuck Von Rospach, who writes, "Hey, Ted, love the art of photography and the podcast. Your Friday mail shows were an inspiration for this as I was thinking about ways to bring permanence to my images and have some way to look at them and share them offline. This is the first volume, hence the amazingly original title 2019 Part 1. My team literally spent months putting that name through focus groups. I wrote a bit how this came to be in a piece that's on my website. I'll put a link in the show description. Keep up the good work and take care, Chuck." Thank you, Chuck. Wild title. You can clearly shoot wildlife. This is a nice little collection. Thanks for sending it in. Next up is a little zine that is called Slovenia, and this comes to us from Brian Lackey. And Brian put a nice card in here, and he writes, "Ted, thank you so much for inspiring me and thousands of others through your channel. I've toyed around with the idea of making a book or zine for a while, but never got around to it. There were just too many variables and decisions. I didn't know where to start. Well, I finally decided just to figure it out, and I went to learn from my mistakes, making the next one even better. Turns out making a zine really wasn't that hard, and I'm so glad I did it. These photos are from a trip to Slovenia a few years back, and they're still some of my favorites, even though I've upgraded my gear considerably since then. Anyway, thanks again, and hope you enjoy, Brian Lackey." So first of all, Brian, you have some beautiful landscape images. This is a really lovely little zine, and a couple things that I want to say about it. First of all, I love that you decided just to go for it and learn from your own mistakes. I think that is, like, in terms of just self-learning, that is the best way to go with anything, because you're not going to know until you give it a try. People call this the crappy first draft sometimes, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to figure things out, and the more you look at it, and the more you work with it, you're going to come up with something that you are happy with, and I'm really glad that came up. Now, I want to address this just because it did come up in the other package that I was sent too, but this whole idea of getting your work out there and not feeling like it's any good, and I think that putting together work in publication form, so in other words, a zine or a book or something, it's kind of difficult, and it's a little bit different than just treating things as the single photograph. So I've got a question for you guys as viewers. Would you all be interested in me covering this as a topic on my channel? I've thought about doing it before. I think there's a lot we could talk about, a lot we could study from other books that have been successful, and a lot that we can learn from that. I just don't know really what the interest gauge is going to be on something like that. So if you're interested, drop me something in the comments and let me know what you would like to see in terms of bookmaking and publishing and layouts and how to put things together, because I think this could be something that would be fun to discuss in further detail. It's just a thought. It's something that I see people write in notes that they include with the books, and I've also seen it in comments, and so I'm just trying to gauge an interest level on something like that. I've got two more that I want to share with you, including this one, which is one of my favorite things in the world. It's stuff shot in Japan and is absolutely gorgeous. But real quick, I want to take a quick second and give a shout out to our sponsor this week, who are the awesome folks over at squarespace.com. Listen, you need a website, and we all know how much work that is to build and maintain, but it doesn't have to be. Squarespace is by far the easiest way to build your online presence. It's also the best way to grow a business that works for you without having to write a single line of code. Do you just need a simple portfolio or a blog to showcase your work? Well, Squarespace is perfect. Featuring a drag-and-drop interface. It's intuitive, it allows you to build galleries quickly and update your site with ease. Are you running a business? Well, Squarespace gives you additional tools for things like appointment scheduling, private member areas, social media tools, and even advanced email marketing. Do you sell products or services? Well, Squarespace has you covered with complete tools to power your store, from merchandising to checkout, so that you can sell, ship, and build your customer base. You can even sell classes or manage appointments through your website. And with Squarespace extensions, you can easily sync with third parties to manage, optimize, and enhance your website. From social media integration to SEO, Squarespace gives you all the tools you need to grow a business that works for you. So head over to Squarespace and sign up for the free trial. Start with one of their award-winning templates and see what you can create and just how good you're going to look. When you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/AOP and I can save you an additional 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Just use offer code AOP on checkout. So give it a try and see if Squarespace is right for you. And I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Okay, this little zine is called In Bloom Japan, and this comes to us from Brian Sargent. He has a nice little note in here. He writes, "Dear Ted Forbes, hey fellow Texan, I now live in Brooklyn for the last 3 years, yet soon to move again. Thank you for all the inspirational content you produce for the show. I made this zine in the early part of 2018, selling a few copies to friends and family. However, a little over a year from when I made it, and 2 years since I went to Japan, I have had the opportunity to live in Tokyo and to continue working in the beauty, fashion industries, and of course, personal projects. Finding this zine was like being handed an old roll of 120 film that got lost in a pant pocket between a couch cushion. I know you know New York City, but living here is literally like a time machine. Everything is moving so fast that 3 years seems like 8 in the blink of an eye. A blessing if you ride the wave, but a curse if you fight it. Looking through this reminded me of watching your videos about street photography. Before going to Japan, it inspired me to explore out of my comfort zone, get close, and let go. It led me to explore a world completely unknown to me. Thank you, Brian." So Brian, first of all, gorgeous photographs. And I want to say something about Japan because it's actually a place I've never been, and it's been on my bucket list forever. I would love to go to Tokyo. In fact, my friend David Brookover, who I did an artist series video on years ago, we talked about the possibility of going to Kyoto, I guess it was last year, and we're still kind of in the throes of COVID, and it was just impossible to even go. So it's still on our list. I would love to do it. David lived over there for several years, actually more than several. He lived over there for a while, speaks Japanese, the whole thing. And so that's definitely on my list. The second thing I want to say is New York. Yes, I've been to New York many times, and it's really weird because since the pandemic, I actually have not been to New York since 2019. That was the last place that I went right before stuff started locking down and shutting down. It was really strange. And it's just weird because like for the last, 15, 20 years, I've been to New York at least once a year and sometimes multiple times a year. And I've had friends that ask me all the time, well, why don't you just live in New York? And well, the truth is it's actually cheaper to live in Texas because I'm 3 hours from anything in the country by flight and I can just go to New York for a lot cheaper than it is to live there. So anyway, I am very jealous of the fact that you have had the opportunity to live in New York, and yes, it is a time capsule, and everything moves quickly. It's just weird because in the last couple of years, I really haven't done a whole lot of extensive traveling, and I certainly haven't been back to a lot of the places that I love to go, like New York City, and so hopefully one day that will change and we'll be able to get back soon. But lovely book, and it just makes me yearn to go to Japan even more. There's just an essence to the color and the subject matter and the light that's just awesome. So awesome work, Brian. Thank you. And speaking of Asian countries, this is a zine called Lustrum that comes to us from Scott Mallon, who has signed it. This is edition 2 of 100, and I've looked everywhere. There doesn't seem to be a card in here, so I've got nothing to read, so we'll just go off of what the book has in it. It's really quite nice. So Scott, thank you for sharing, and I swear I have looked all over the place. I know that I'm somewhat careless when I rip these open at the beginning of the video, and I just wanted to make sure a card didn't fly somewhere and I don't have one. But thank you for the zine. It looks beautiful, and the last couple zines that I've been looking at, actually, pretty much almost everything in here today has made me want to be traveling again. I want to get out and see things and take pictures and be inspired, and hopefully we're getting to a point that we can actually do that one day soon. So anyway, I want to thank everybody who sent something in. Awesome work as usual. I will catch you guys in the next video. Until then, later.